Geek out! Bleep blop bloop gamers. Welcome to another installment of the Video Game Archives. I'm Sam.
I'm Zach.
This week we're going to be talking about 2002's Super Mario Sunshine. Aha! The only real, within the Super Mario series game on the console, if you think about it. Which I guess, if you think about it, the Super Nintendo just had Super Mario World, because we're not counting RPG or Super Mario World 2, because that's just a Yoshi game in disguise.
Yeah, at this point it's pretty much one mainline title per system, with the exception of Super Mario Galaxy 2 later on.
And, well, it's wild. There's like 3 on the Wii, because there's New Super Mario Brothers Wii.
Right. But, yeah, sorry.
And the Wii U, as much as people kind of shit on that console for not being successful, technically has 2. Right? It's got the New Super Mario Brothers U.
World and New Super Mario Brothers U.
But yeah, the GameCube only has Super Mario Sunshine, which I think carries a lot of unfair pressure, because I think a lot of people come into Super Mario Sunshine and they're like, "Oh, cool, this is going to be Super Mario 64 too." And it is a 3D platformer that stars Mario against Bowser, and he's trying to rescue Peach, but it's not, at the same time, it's not Super Mario 64 2. Would you kind of consider it Super Mario 64 2?
Yeah, I mean, the flood is a huge mechanic for this game, and it's pretty much used just about everywhere. So, in a sense, it is a much prettier Super Mario 64 for the next generation. However, it's so different from every other 3D platform that Mario's been in that it's pretty much, it's its own beast.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was very deliberate. I don't think they were looking to kind of retread. It's interesting because Nintendo had been working on a follow-up to Super Mario 64 since Super Mario 64 came out, because, that's the game that launched that console. And there's elements of what was originally planned in Super Mario Galaxy, a lot of what was planned in Super Mario Galaxy, but there's a lot of concepts that were originally introduced in Super Mario 64 sequel in Pikmin, the idea of commanding multiple, and I think you see some of that with the mini Marios. I think that's Donkey Kong, Mario vs. Donkey Kong has the mini Marios.
Yeah, there was also, right, and then there was also the Mario 128 demo where they had a whole bunch of
128 Marios
or version Marios on a platform, and then the platform could move around.
Right. So I think, a lot of the stuff that was originally conceived for a potential Super Mario 64 sequel ended up in Pikmin, and ended up in Super Mario Galaxy with the gravity, the weird gravity and controls that you see, because I think there was some of that going on too. So this is kind of like a streamlined version of what was originally planned for a follow-up to Super Mario 64. And it's I think it's a much more challenging game than Super Mario 64. It's one of perhaps the most... I would go that far. I would say I would call it maybe the most challenging 3D Mario platformer.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's between that or Galaxy 2.
Yeah, the things that I found particularly challenging about Super Mario Sunshine is that some of the Shine Sprite missions and getting the blue coins, and then I would probably say the final stage leading up to the final boss, where you're operating a boat via the flood. What I found challenging was just kind of these pain-in-the-ass missions that it never really felt like it was a matter of skill and I lost and it's my fault. It just felt more like, how is this fun to anyone playing this?
Yeah.
And granted, these are so far and few in between. One example that stands out to me, aside from steering the boat, is oh gosh, I forget the name of the level, but one of the final missions in that stage is that you're trying to get the biggest giant fruit for this fruit festival, and you're trying to steer it towards this blender, and this thing is very sensitive. So kind of like in Donkey Kong, where like even if it falls just a little bit, it crushes. and you think, oh, hey, is it this giant fruit? Nope, even bigger than that. Nope, even bigger than that. And it's like all the way in the back of the stage at the top of this mountain, and then you're trying to escort it without making sure it's not rolling swiftly downhill. And it's a chore. And then beating this level, I'm like, thank God I don't have to play the stage ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like my favorite Mario games are the ones that both reward skill but have that element of accessibility. Like, that's why people don't like Super Mario Brothers 2 or Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels as much, right? Because it's...
Exactly.
Yeah. 1 and especially 3 and Super Mario World perfectly balance that. Is there hard stuff in Super Mario 64? Absolutely. Like, I can't get all the power stars in Mario's Rainbow Ride. I just can't. I'm not that good. But there's enough stuff in Super Mario 64 where it's one of my favorite games of all time. I can't say that about Sunshine. I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's actually one of the most underrated Mario games, period. But I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be, but I don't think it's as good as I want it to be either, if that makes any sense.
No, actually, that you worded it a lot better than I was thinking.
What do you had mentioned Flood earlier being it's a huge gameplay change in the gameplay mechanic here than any other Mario game, both before and after. What do you think of Flood overall?
I mean, I think it was a very bold risk to introduce this flood mechanic in a Mario game, and I think it paid off for them, and it stood the test of time as, it's being featured in Super Smash Brothers as one of Mario's moves. It's not one of those things where it's just, oh, hey, we're not going to speak of this again and sweep it under the rug. Zelda, for example, every iteration they try introducing a new mechanic. Some are awesome, some are just kind of, you tried. This one, they did some really cool things with Flood. So, for instance, obviously just trying to getting rid of the pollution in Delfino Plaza. It's very satisfying when you're just running around while simultaneously spraying. And one thing that I really appreciated about the analog shoulder buttons is that you could, press it lightly and then Mario can move around, or he could stand still and you can aim it if you click the button all the way. So you had a lot of control and it was very versatile. The same thing with the hover peripheral, where you're just extending a jump to get that extra oomph in order to get to another platform. And some of the levels were built that way, so that way you could put the hover jet to use. Yeah. And you were mentioning cleaning up the pollution with Flood. I always liked that kind of tangible progress where you could see. I mean, for the longest time, the only sense of progress you get in a Mario game, both 64, Super Mario World, or Super Mario Brothers 3, is you just get access to greater areas in the hub, in the world map, and that certainly applies in Sunshine too. But you can literally see yourself start to make progress and clean up Delfino Plaza and all that. That I thought was really cool. Oh, absolutely. Especially when you reach the threshold of this number of shines, and then it gets brighter, and then the pollution's a little more contained. It's great.
Now, having said that, Delfino Plaza, fantastic design. Actually, one of the things I love the most about this game is, like, graphically, it's one of the best looking games on the GameCube, like, period, right?
Definitely. The cutscenes were such a treat to watch.
Oh yeah. They figured out how to do textures and light really well and kind of push the hardware as far as it could go, without making, without compromising Mario's design. The Delfino Plaza never quite appealed to me as a hub as much as, say, Princess Peach's Castle or Planet Mario in the Super Mario Galaxy games, or that never quite. There was I like the pinatas. I like the what are the weird duck monster things?
Cataquacks. What are those called? The ones that spring you up in the air, right?
Yeah, are they cataquacks or something like that?
I forget.
But those are cool. Petey Piranha obviously is big in this, and makes his debut here, as does like evil Ink Blot Mario. which is really just Baby Bowser in disguise. Spoilers for a 16-year-old game, but the
odd, right?
yeah.
I had to watch that cutscene twice because I didn't quite understand what the heck was happening.
Yeah. But this hub, it never quite Delfino Plaza or the Isle of Delfino never quite did it for me as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful design, but I feel it didn't really come to life. All the NPCs, if you will, they were just kind of standing around, hopeless, and like none of them had any character. Though, gosh, actually, one character that really stood out to me that I wish they would bring back is El Pianissimo.
Oh yeah,
who he was against.
Yeah, I remember that dude. Yeah,
they should bring him back. I thought he was great.
I'm always interested, like, what Nintendo's relationship is with, like you were mentioning, Flood. That's a huge. They took out the. That's one of Mario's special moves in Super Smash, right? Like in both Brawl and the Wii U one. Have they confirmed if that's coming back for the big one that comes out this year for the Switch?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. And of course, there's like Isle of Delfino levels in Brawl in the Wii U version as well. Mm-hmm. And there's like racetracks, I think as early as like Double Dash. Like I think there's, you get
Peach Beach kind of shares similarities to it.
Yeah, and I think it has the Cataquacks and everything. But I'm always kind of curious because, like, in a lot of ways, I feel like this is the Mario game that Nintendo, at least the Mario game in recent history, that Nintendo kind of like brushes under the carpet a bit. They're like, okay, well, look at all the cool new stuff like we've got. Here's another new Super Mario Brothers game. These are fun, right? You like these? Hey, look, it's Mario in a cat suit. That you wanted this, sure.
One thing that I find particularly interesting about this game is that for a mainline Mario title, this one has a pretty fleshed out story that breaks away from the traditional Bowser Knapp's Princess Peach. Well, even though that does like happen in some extent, it's not the primary focus. The focus is just getting rid of this pollution.
Yeah, Mario's framed for polluting island paradise and has to clean it up. That's the story,
Yeah.
Though I was always intrigued by Peach's reaction when like Baby Bowser's like, "Oh yeah, Bowser says you're my mom."
Just, I'm your mom? What?
Yeah, it isn't like, "Oh, I never like hooked up with this like." Because he's like kaiju sized in this game, right?
Yes. And he has like this ahoy matey voice, like Mario. How dare you interrupt me while I'm bathing?
Yeah, the final boss fight.
Straight, hey, Junior.
The final boss fight of this game is just Bowser like enjoying like a hot bath or like hanging out in like a jacuzzi thing.
And you're just not letting him have it.
Yeah, you're just like, you know what? I'm taking out all the supports and I'm flushing you down. That's how this goes. Like, what a weird gameplay, like, setup, like, mechanic.
I'll stop you, Mario. I'm going to fire my missiles while bathing.
Yeah. I have these just in case, and I'll never be this big again.
Oh, my gosh.
That was, like, the weirdest thing. Because I have actually beaten Super Mario Sunshine. I can't say that about every game we've covered here. I did beat Mario World in 64 and 3 and 1. I guess it's really just Mario 2 and Lost. No, I beat Lost Level. No, I never beat Lost Levels. And I never beat Super Mario Land 2 now I'm thinking about it. But yeah, it's just the weirdest thing. Like, why the hell, like, getting to that last boss fight and seeing like kaiju-sized Bowser, like what the hell is going on? Like he's never been that big, and he'll never be that big again.
Oh my gosh, it's oh yeah, that's right. And also one thing that was happening as far as bosses go, it was pretty easy. It was just like rocket nozzle 5 times at these giant bullseye locations. And then one thing that I'm remembering as I'm going through this with you is that even Flood, because this is also like a talking robot that's on Mario's back, it starts malfunctioning as you're busting up the bathtub. And then you have this moment at the end of like, oh no, is Flood gonna die?
My robot buddy, my robot backpack.
Yeah, I forgot.
Like HVAC, basically. He's a
what
super.
What does it stand for?
Something device. fluid, something liquid, something with a U, something device. Yeah, it's a weird game. All the entire GameCube era is a weird era for Nintendo.
Okay, I found the acronym. Are you ready?
Sure, lay it on me.
The Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dowsing Device.
I got one of those letters right.
Yeah.
I do love that, and I feel like in a lot of ways, like Super Mario Galaxy 2 is as much a spiritual sequel to this as it is to Super Mario Galaxy, in that both games let you use Yoshi, which I loved. I loved using Yoshi in Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, I have to say with Yoshi and Sunshine, this was probably one of the worst iterations of using Yoshi that I've experienced. Because I remember working my butt off, knowing that Yoshi was in this and that he could eat up the giant fruit. And then once I started riding him, I'm like, that's it? Yoshi can't swim. There's water everywhere.
Yeah, he could swim in Super Mario World. What the hell happened?
Yeah.
Also, you basically use him to projectile vomit juice on things.
Oh my gosh.
Which is just the weirdest. It's such a weird. This entire era of Nintendo is just the weirdest era. It's none of it.
And that's the thing. This isn't a bad game by any means. It's it's just, it's just that they've set an incredibly high standard with all the previous installments that anything that comes off just good, it really shows.
Here's a question. Do you prefer this game or do you prefer Luigi's Mansion? Because those are basically the two marquee Mario-esque titles. We're not covering Luigi's Mansion on this series right now, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly kind of tangentially related. Which of the two games do you prefer?
I mean, gosh.
They both have a backpack mechanic too, now that I think about it.
Yeah, right. I would go Super Mario Sunshine, mainly because I love Luigi's Mansion, but it was god-awful short.
Yeah.
I remember breezing through that game, even when I was a kid.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, and it's not a hard game to figure out, you can get through Luigi's Mansion very quickly. It's hard for me to get through Sunshine quickly because I have to have cooldown periods where I'm like, this is too frustrating. I'm just not in the mood right now. I remember whenever you go into a warp pipe and all of a sudden you get that transition cutscene where Shadow Mario steals Flood. That always pisses me off. Not so much because of what happens in the cutscene, but because I know I'm going to get a really hard challenge level.
See, it's funny for me because I actually enjoyed those levels the most out of Sunshine. I think it was just because it went to more of the traditional roots of, hey, you jump on these platforms, you get to the finish. And I love that a cappella Mario theme in the background. It really stuck with me.
I always thought it was really haunting. This kind of and I feel like a lot of modern Mario, for better or worse, takes its cues stylistically from Sunshine, the entire the kind of the more colorful and brightly lit environments obviously kind of come from this. The weird chorus of people, like you were mentioning, the a cappella people basically singing the music, the ba da ba 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 ba, that's something that really has continued since this game, and probably because of this game. I remember when Charles Martinet was at AwesomeCon last year, I think he basically just played the soundtrack to this game.
That sounds like something he'd do.
Yeah. It's a weird beast, man. This entire game.
So let's talk about some of the features in this game. I mean, we touched on Flood, but how about the rocket or the turbo nozzles?
Oh yeah. I mean, they do try to mix it up, right? They try to they're like, it can do more than just suck up and shoot water, and it's like, yeah, no, it can totally.
And these were transparent boxes, similar to the Vanish Cap and the Wing Cap in Mario 64. You had to unlock them.
Yeah. I mean, it was. Yeah, I mean, you're unlocking more capabilities. I think Flood says as much when the game starts too. He's like, you can, as you progress, I'll be able to do more shit, and it's just like, okay. Um, yeah, it's kind of this whole weird thing. I mean, what's your favorite? What's your favorite aspect of Flood?
Well, yeah. So the favorite, I really love the turbo nozzle, but I just wish there were more stages that were built around it because I thought I was just like cutting loose. It kind of reminded me of Dragon Ball Z when they're in full flight mode, just like breaking apart the water as they're flying.
Sure.
And especially when you're on the water because it's just like, hey, infinite turbo use.
Mhm.
That was a lot of fun. And one thing that did particularly bother me about Flood when using the hover nozzle is if you're on doing some like narrow platforming and you're trying to be very specific of where you're going, the camera will whip behind Mario as soon as you use the hover nozzle, and then you have to realign yourself of which way you're pushing the stick in relation to where the camera's facing. And it's like very subtle, but it's just enough to piss you off. Um, but some things that I really liked that I think have been introduced in other 3D platforms, not necessarily Mario titles. For instance, let's say if Mario's going behind a building and the camera can't exactly get around there, they'll show him as a shadow.
Mhm.
And I thought that was just so clever the way they did that.
Yeah. Again, like one of the things I like the most about this game is the use of like light. Like there's just like it it really visually it's one of the most gorgeous Mario games, and I think that's where I think that's what a lot of people forget. It just looks just phenomenal. Like it is truly one of the best looking games on the entire console. I'm struggling to. The only thing I can maybe that potentially comes close is what, like Twilight Princess, maybe.
Twilight Princess was a very desaturated game.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking out loud, I'm like, wait a minute. Well, and there's the weird. There's a lot of blockiness there too, with the weird like cube things that people teleport in. But yeah, there's like almost like a weird filter across all of Twilight Princess. But yeah, with this is almost. There's a lot of lens flare too. I think you get a lot of glare. You know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Nintendo always does well that I appreciate are the particle effects, like especially when you're spraying everything with water and you're getting rid of the pollution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I guess they really know how to make the best use of the technology at the time. So if there's something that's limiting them, they're like, well, hey, how can we present it in a way where you don't really see those limitations at all, and it's just part of its environment? And I still think that holds true to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because like I'm waiting for the next. You could argue that was never Nintendo's goal, but there's never been as major a jump visually in Mario games as there has been from like 64 to Sunshine. Like
I gotta. I mean, you could argue with like resolution and whatnot, but however, as far as I guess just like the overall perception
mm-hmm.
of like going from like blockiness to like, oh hey, smooth shapes. So I remember when I was a kid, I subscribed to Game Informer, and I got this one issue that was like the GameCube blowout, and then that's when they showed like Melee and Sunshine and like the Star Fox title that they were working on before it became Dinosaur Planet, and then like the Mario Kart they were working on before it became Double Dash. Anyways, so they show Mario, and he has Flood on him. However, he also has like this spaceship helmet, implying that he can just go underwater for long periods of time. And I guess they must have dished that later on because I think there's only one instance of this being used where he puts on like a fishbowl for one of the missions, and then he's able to just go underwater longer, but not necessarily breathe underwater. So I remember it was really interesting seeing one of the first instances that I remember where the trailer or the screenshot is different from the final product.
Yeah. I always kind of wish that this game, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think if the fishbowl helmet comes into, like, play. Does that come into play in, like, the underwater modes and underwater levels in Galaxy?
I don't think so.
When you're, like, piloting, grabbing onto the turtle shells and...
that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Um, I always wish that like, and I think we all do, and Nintendo's kind of will they, won't they for years with this. I always wanted them to do like GameCube games on the Virtual Console or Nintendo Online or Switch Online or whatever they end up calling it. Because yeah, I want to see a revisit of, all those Zelda games. By all those, I mean 2 got the HD re-release. We never got the HD re-release of Sunshine or Luigi's Mansion or any of that. Or the Prime trilogy would look great in HD too. But especially Sunshine. Sunshine's visually was already top of the class for the GameCube. So I would love to see it get an enhanced remake, or because I think it
hold up absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a game that a lot of people wrote off, just because I feel like a lot of people just kind of wrote off the GameCube in general. Like if it wasn't Smash Brothers Melee, they didn't give a shit, and that kind of bummed me out, because I was like, but there's a lot of good stuff there. Just like I love the Wii U, and I feel like I'm in the minority there. I'm like, there's still like good games, guys.
Reach.
Yeah. This isn't a Virtual Boy situation. There is good titles.
But yeah, going back to Sunshine for a moment, did you have a favorite world that you traversed in this game?
Well, and that kind of speaks to the whole Delfino Plaza thing again. There wasn't like a moment in like Sunshine where I was like, oh, this is like its own like subworld. For me, everything in Sunshine just felt like an extension of Delphine, and you could argue it is, but
no, yeah, I mean, yeah, I could easily see that.
Yeah, that's why it never quite. What I loved about 64 and what I love about the Galaxy games and what I love about Odyssey, which I've finally played, is that the worlds are so distinct. It's not really like, I remember in Sunshine, there's like a world where like stuff's on fire, or it's got like the weird like orange paint, the like flammable paint or whatever they call it. And I was like, oh, this. I'm in a new part of the island now, but there's not much. Or like there's one where you're like you were talking about like the turbo function on Flood, and you're like, oh, this is where I think it's the part of Delfino where you're introduced to that mechanic and introduced to the boating mechanic, because that's like all that world is for the most part.
Yeah.
But it wasn't distinct enough where I was like, oh, this is its own world, so much as, oh, this is just like another. It's almost like a glorified tutorial, right?
So if I'm reading you right, you're saying that because all the different worlds are too similar to Delfino Plaza, as in they're just, areas of the same region, that it's hard to tell them apart as to, what each of their names are and whatnot?
Yeah. Honestly, Zach, I can't tell you the names.
So like one were a desert and then one were a snowy place, then it would jog your memory better.
Yeah. Where I'm like, oh, hey, this is like Frap Snowland. Cool. Or this is the, I can make that associate. Not Frap Snowland. That's not a place. But what do they call it? Snowman's Land or Cool Mountain. Cool Mountain. Whereas with like Galaxy, I'm like, oh, this is the sweet world. This is the dessert world, right? Where like everything's like like cookies and candy. I don't really get that with Sunshine.
I get that.
And that's, I think, a conscious that, we're talking about how this game has perhaps the most clear narrative than any other Mario game, and I think that's kind of a natural extension, very much an extension of that. But there's something a little, it's not as inspiring, or certainly not as striking as a player.
Yeah, definitely not as striking.
But again, gameplay-wise, it's fine. There are those moments where I'm like, this is super frustrating. I'm not having a good time, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's a game, and to reiterate, it's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be. It's just not as good as I want it to be, and maybe that's on me. Maybe that's on that. Maybe that's you were talking about high expectations and high bars. Maybe that's just me expecting it to be as good as Super Mario 64 and as good as the Super Mario Galaxy games, or certainly as good as Super Mario Odyssey. I mean, that's incredible too. I mean, talk about like distinct worlds. You go from like Dinosaur Planet to like Sugar Skull Planet. That's a big jump, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
New Donk City, but here it's just like, oh, here's more pinatas that need help. Here's new, and it's not even like, I don't know, like there's something there. I'm trying to think what that one crucial ingredient is, man, that's missing that like that keeps it from elevating it to the same level, and I don't quite know what it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I don't know, it had a lot of variety to it, but I just think we've just been spoiled by everything else that it doesn't seem the case.
Yeah, believe me, there are a lot worse like 3D platformers out there than Super Mario. You could do a lot worse. I mean, the sheer virtue of me wanting an HD remake or just a re-release in general of Super Mario Sunshine speaks to my interest in Super Mario Sunshine, but my lack of like super good things to say about Super Mario Sunshine also speaks to Super Mario, like the quality of Super Mario Sunshine.
I can just like list a few things off the top of my head that I appreciate about Sunshine. Like in no particular order. One, when you climb cages in this game, they brought back the punching panel and then show up on the reverse side that was in Super Mario World.
Yep.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that there's more flexibility with that too. So you can like hang from the ceiling and then kick up and then show up on top of the cage. Another thing is the theme park level, which I found out is Pinna Park. Sorry, I don't remember that at the top of my head. Bear with me. The first mission is you're defeating Mecha Bowser, and then that's when you come to the revelation that Shadow Mario is Bowser Jr., and you're fighting Mecha Bowser by going on this roller coaster and then just like hammering it with FLUDD until you essentially just like drown all of its ports.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. That happens. But really, so this is your least favorite use of Yoshi?
Sorry, one more.
Yeah,
okay. When you're fighting against the giant squid and you rip off all of its tentacles, and then to the point where you start grabbing its mouth and then start yanking that too, and that's how you defeat it. That is pretty metal for Mario.
That's you usually don't rip off body parts in a Mario game. That usually doesn't happen. I remember I think it's the first Paper Mario, you straight up fight a dude's heart, but yeah, you don't rip off body parts.
Okay, but yeah, how to get those off of my chest.
Okay, so let's turn it around, Charlie Brown. What are the things you like the least about Super Mario Sunshine?
Least, hands down, the blue coins. Like I know it was just like a thing to get. You cash them in, you get more shine sprites. When really, considering that the town's in danger, I don't know why this dude's holding shine sprites hostage in exchange for blue coins. I think that's pretty messed up. And yeah, there's like the biggest pain in the ass to artificially lengthen the game. It's like achievements before achievements were a thing.
Have you ever 100%ed this game?
I had zero desire to. I think I reached 80 shine sprites, and then the town was bright and sunny, and I was like, all right, works for me because I don't care about the blue coins.
It's like good enough. This will be fine.
Yeah, I got the shades, but I didn't get the shine shirt.
I think, again, that speaks to the... Granted, I've never been able to 100% Super Mario 64 before either. I can top out around 100 power stars, so I'm still like 20 power stars short. Whereas, yeah, no, I've never 100. I've just gotten enough to take on.
Even the news caption at the bottom wasn't sure if I should continue playing. It was like, oh, hey, Delfino's bright and sunny again, but there's still shine sprites out there.
Yeah, how are you going to play this one? I don't know. I maybe move on to Donkey Konga again or something.
Oh, my gosh.
But, yeah. Any parting thoughts about Super Mario Sunshine, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, play it, go nuts, try off all the different nozzles. I probably could have worded that better. And yeah, it's if there's this level that's too annoying for and like such a pain, move on to the next one and then try to see if you can progress that way. It is enjoyable. There is some charm to it. Seeing Mario in the opening cinematic with hearts in his eyes going to a resort, it's cute. It's an enjoyable title.
Yeah, not as bad as everybody seems to write it. It was a player's choice game. It hit that million copies sold in the United States. It according to Sawada, it did less than Nintendo hoped, but it was not a failure. It still sold millions of copies worldwide. And you could say that's in a way, Super Mario Sunshine represents Nintendo as a whole at the time. They're, I think, trying to find their place in the 21st century. I think they were trying to. Nintendo's got this thing where they always want to make their games or their consoles both upgradable and semi-portable. You saw that with the Wii U. You see it with the Switch. The Switch perfects it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw them try it with the Virtual Boy. You saw them because if you think about it, the GameCube was designed to be portable. It came with a handle. It was designed so you could pick it up and carry it to a friend's house.
I probably did that twice.
Yeah. But this console. So if the Nintendo 64 is the first Nintendo console to not be the top of its generation, it's number 2 behind the original PlayStation. GameCube is in 3rd place. It's behind the PlayStation 2, which is the best-selling console of all time, and the Xbox. And I think that's when Nintendo really has to do some soul searching, and that leads to the Wii, which is I forget, did the Wii top the NES? Is that the best-selling Nintendo console of all time?
Yeah, pretty much. Right now the Wii's like the second best-selling console of all time behind the PlayStation 2, and then if the Switch keeps doing as well as it is, then maybe there's a new successor. Who knows?
Sweet, yeah, and I think that's a good. We'll be back next time with actually, I guess not a Wii title. We're going DS next time, but with New Super Mario Bros. The first New Super Mario Bros., which kicks off its own generation, a whole sub series of Super Mario games. But this has been another installment of the Video Game Archives. I'm Sam.
I'm Zach.
We'll catch you next time. This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.